Hey, hi. It's
It's Saturday morning.
Saturday morning, and I don't know the last time we did this. It was a few days ago.
Yeah, maybe like a week. Maybe last Saturday
No, it was like
when
during
we
the
did it
week. It
together,
was during
really?
the week. Yeah, it was like a Wednesday or something. It was right after that all this the distraction from COVID started taking place. The Minneapolis riots.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because God, that was just a few days ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's
So everything's happening at such a rapid pace
right
that it's
that,
hard to keep track of everything. And that's intentional, I'm sure.
yeah, things change every day. Okay, so I'll start out with cops behaving badly. I'm sure everybody's noticed lately over the last couple of days on their news feed, if they're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media source you have for news and updates, that you've been seeing a lot of just random captures of cops like doing crazy things. Like I literally been away from my phone all morning because I made us a nice breakfast and we talked and stuff, and I literally been away from my phone. I turn on my phone, it pops up Facebook. The first thing I see on my phone is a captured video of two cops smashing the window of somebody, smashing the car window of somebody's car in Michigan. And the caption reads, "Man refused to show his ID, so the cops smashed the window." And of course, you're watching this and your heart rate goes up and you get triggered.
Hmm.
And it's a very terrible thing when cops behave badly, of course, as we all know. I mean, that's the fundamental reason why everybody's taking to the streets these last few days. um, but what I guess what I want to do is come back down to this, the thing that I was talking about in my video, in the last video that I did, which was the last tutorial on the Book of Hours YouTube page, which is that is something called multi-state coalitions which have been formed, and multi-state coalitions are a collection of um, states that have come together to create a new economy and a new bureaucracy for these collection of states. So, for instance, I do know that Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, Kentucky, and Wisconsin and Ohio
Yeah, I think so.
are the Midwestern coalition. So Michigan and Minnesota are in this Midwestern coalition. So what happens in a coalition? You have unelected committee members that represent both public and private partnerships to redo the bureaucracy and the economy of that particular coalition. It becomes kind of like a mini little European Union
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in these regional coalitions, and it's not just the Midwest coalition, there's also the East coalition, there's also the Southern coalition, and there's also the West Coast coalition. There's many different states that make up different coalitions. So the United States is being broken apart into a handful of coalitions. JP and I live in Pennsylvania. We're part of the East Coast coalition. It's Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Delaware. That's 7 states now that make up one coalition,
Hmm.
one economy, one bureaucracy. So what's happening is things like your local police department are kind of like going away. It's going to take a while for these new systems to be put into place.
Hmm.
Do I know what your local police department will be replaced with? Will it be a private security firm? Will it be the National Guard? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's
kind
hard
of
to
feel
say.
like they're still working these
I
details out,
agree. And,
you
and
know?
it's important to point out that this is part of global governance, the initiatives of global governance, where you have it starts at local, then it goes to regional, um, and then it goes to there may be national, but I doubt it. And then there's the global, right? So it allows governance to be taken care of at different levels, but it all comes under one global governance rather than nations, and nationalization. It's the antithesis of nationalization. It's global governance, and So it's easier to break it down into smaller pieces, but they're not quite as big as, say, like the United States or Russia, or these larger nation states. Um, so this is the, like Julie said, we're in the East Coast coalition. And then they will probably break it down locally as like maybe like county or sets of counties, right? So what we've noticed in our little burg, we're just outside of Pittsburgh, just across the border, literally, that we're starting to see Allegheny County police cars floating around here and there. We do have our own little borough police. And there's these little rivalries between the different boroughs and townships. But I think that's all going to go away, and that we're going to be policed more by, say, the Allegheny county police, and it may increase from there or change from there. It's hard to say. It's all going to morph, and these plans are being decided or have been decided already, and it's just a matter of them putting them into play. And I think that that's what we're seeing going on. Did you want to talk more about the bad behavior?
Yeah, so what does this have to do with cops behaving badly? Well, sometimes you have to look at the actual imagery that you see on the screen. So when you see a cop smashing in the window of a pass of on the driver's side of a vehicle, because the driver refused to give his ID, or you see other signaling triggering images like a bunch of protesters spray painting and smashing up the windows of a cop car. What this message is telling you is that this is a breakdown of that legacy system.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of actually looking at the image through an emotional place, right now everybody is speaking about this situation through a very justifiable emotional place. Somebody was murdered. It is only natural as a human being to react emotionally to that murder. Okay, the murder was unjustified, but your reaction to it is justified because you're a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take emotion out of it, and you take your emotion and you put it to the side for just a minute, you can see that the signal that they're telling you when they spray paint the cop car and set fire to police stations, the signal that they're telling you is that these are legacy systems, or these are infrastructures that you've always known your entire life that are going away. They're literally being they're literally imploding or exploding in front of your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take that for what that means. This cop car is going away. This police department is going away. Now, you all have amazing critical thinking skills, so you're going to go to that next level in your brain that says, so this particular vehicle is going away, and this particular building is going away. Does that mean that the agency itself might be going away? And then you go to, well, why would the agency go away? Well, because of these multi-state coalitions, a new bureaucracy and a new economy is going to take the place of these old systems, of these old infrastructures that were the way that things used to be. So now it's going to be whatever, National Guard, private securities, people, I don't know. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
But they are going away, and that's all you need to know. And I think that's the point that I really wanted to drive home with this, is that it is much easier for the multi-state coalitions to have these unelected committee members and these managerial elite types put in these new systems. It's much easier for them to do all this with your help.
Mm-hmm.
And with your permission. So by being emotional and saying down with cops and get rid of cops and all that stuff, that's you giving them permission in their warped, twisted, pathological minds, because we're also dealing with people who, even though they're psychopaths, even though the ruling elite are typically psychopaths, and then they're bootlickers who are the managerial elite that implement all of these different systems, they are sociopaths. So you've got psychopaths ruling sociopaths and paying them lots of money to do these things. Even though they are completely void of empathy and completely void of reason and accountability, they still are seeking, purely for legal and logistical reasons, they're seeking permission from the public to implement these systems. So by reacting the way you do, you give them permission to take away your local police, to take away officer friendly. And what they do is they create these, streaming visuals on your social media. Am I saying that these cops that are like smashing windows of innocent drivers and things like that, am I saying that they're like crisis actors? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they will make sure that you see these terrible acts of cops behaving badly, and they'll throw it out in front of you to make sure that you react appropriately, to give them the logistical permission to upend and uproot these systems that have always been in place. So that's what's going on. Is it provides a nice cover for to implement these new regionalized systems. So we're probably talking about regionalized education, regionalized policing, regionalized food distribution, regionalized commerce. All of these things that affect your life on a daily basis. Where you can go, what you can do, how much permission you have to do things in your particular region.
How you get there.
Right, because like JP had said, earlier, is that this is all about global governance. This is all about corporate capture of society in general. And everything that we're witnessing here in this country is not just in the United States. It's also happening all over the world, because corporate capture has no borders. It's all over the world. So corporations and governments have merged. That's corporate fascism. When you have corporate fascism and corporate capture, it's easier to control an entire country if you break that country up into regions.
Right.
So it's much easier to do the bidding of the corporations that have captured our governments when it's just 7 states that they have to control, and there are probably committee members that are assigned by the governors of each region to implement the strategies for the new systems that are coming into place.
Right.
Do I have an opinion about this? Sure, I don't like it, but I don't really, that's not why we're here doing this particular message right now.
Yeah, I would like to say to that is that it's this move is very undemocratic.
Sure.
The whole point of global governance is to take away democracy from us, and replace it with corporate structures. And it's always been pointed out over the whole time that I've been an adult is that corporations are not democracies, right? You work for a corporation; it's not a democracy. It's an authoritarian state, as it were, in the form of a business.
Right, and so that's where we are right now. We are in a new, this new model of the way that the country is being run. The countries, I should say, are being run by corporations, and human beings are messy and emotional and intelligent, and they have a lot of different ideas and nuances and philosophies and belief systems, and all of that gets in the way of bureaucracy. All of that gets in the way of this corporate capture. So when you see these videos of these police people, behaving badly, of cops behaving badly, yes, it matters that they're behaving badly, but it kind of doesn't. What they're signaling to you is that this system that you've always grown up with and that you've always known about, officer friendly down the street,
Well, and there's a lot of respect for the police in this country.
In certain parts of the
especially
country,
like where we live.
Yeah, so in certain parts of the country, the police are lifted up like, little demigods or whatever. Personally, I don't have an opinion about any of that.
Yeah.
What I'm just simply,
I get it. No, I know.
What I'm trying to say is that, your local police department, your local school, the way that your systems have always run your entire life are going away because you are part of this multi-state coalition. It's a regionalization of the way that you have always how you've always operated in your life. And there's going to be all sorts of different things, like to the minutest detail, like how much gas you can put in your car, the taxes that you'll pay, how your policing system will work in the future, how your educational system will work, how your food distribution system will work. The probably the pulverizing of poorer communities of color to build up more corporate infrastructure that is completely devoid of any culture. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, all sorts of infrastructure models will be destroyed and reinvented for the benefit of sustainable development, which, if you listen to my other videos, is a very pretty way of saying corporate capture or corporate fascism. All right, so let's just keep all of that in mind as we're watching, police stations being blown up or whatever's happening, or cop cars
or
getting
cops acting badly,
or cops acting badly. This is all a signal to you to
Right.
let you know that it's going away.
Right. Well, and it's funny too, because for a long time, I mean, for a while there, we were seeing all these kinds of videos happening and all these stories about, people of color being killed outright by cops, on the road, or that one woman who was from Chicago who was driving to Texas,
Right.
and then
Sandra
got taken,
Bland. Right.
Sandra Bland. So you had all these stories, and they were, and again, just along the lines of what you just said, we are allowed to see these things because they want us to. The media, and the media is, of course, controlled by these other interests.
By 5 corporations.
Yeah, and these other interests that are putting these implementing these things into place. They went away suddenly, if you remember, for a number of years. And we were even
saying that for many weeks. We were like, so what happened to school shootings, and what happened to the race race actions and things like that.
Yeah, the police racial actions, or however you want to put that.
Yeah.
And
the violence,
and it's like, and I have a feeling that these things never really went away. It's just that they're still being allowed to be seen.
Right.
Okay. This violence against people of color never really went away. It just wasn't being shown to us.
Right.
Okay. And it was because they didn't need to have our outrage, as it were, and feigned outrage, I guess, is what I'd like to say, because most people react to these things via social media, and social media creates a situation where it's like, it's like feigned outrage. It isn't real outrage, and as we pointed out in our last podcast or Periscope podcast, that the at that time, they weren't riots yet. At that time, the protests felt very inauthentic, as opposed to things that happened. Here in Pittsburgh, Antoine Rose was killed by the police. He was a young man. He was very young. He was not even an adult yet. And there was, of course, the protest from the community in which he came from. The black community in Pittsburgh came out to protest, but it was largely ignored by the greater community of Pittsburgh. And apparently there was another, and I hadn't heard about this, but Julie was telling me there was another attack by the police on a black man
on March 5th.
On March 5th, right
Here
before COVID, and nothing, zilch,
zero coverage for this young man. March 5th, 2020. So,
and I know the neighborhood in which he was killed is very impoverished.
Mount Oliver.
Yeah. and it's just so it makes sense that they would cover that up if they didn't want it to be shown. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, no. So what I would like, now that we've discovered that multi-state coalitions are made up of 3 to 7 states, and most of the coalitions are made up of 7 states, and we do know that there's one bureaucracy and one economy for each region, which means that the policing infrastructure, the way the police have always operated in the past, is going away. And so the media is signaling that to you by showing you cops behaving badly and things like that. That is a signal for you to understand that in the future, the way the policing system works in your community is going to be completely different than before COVID. Than what it was before, and how you grew up and what you always understood your local policing system to be. I imagine what it's going to be is, because it's going to be one policing systems and one funding for that policing system spread out through 7 states, that it's going to take a little bit longer for the police to maybe respond to instances or issues. And so, because it's no longer community by little township by little neighborhood, it's literally going to be a regional, it's going to be localized, that answer to regionalized, to answer to globalized. So it's going to be different. It's going to be very different, and it's probably going to be a private security firm that you will have to pay for. And maybe that's just my theory about it. It could be something like the National Guard, where your taxes go into it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a regionalization, and a multi-state coalition is a region of 7 states. So what you're seeing with the cops behaving badly is a message to you loud and clear that this is going away. All right, so now I want to let JP take the floor and talk about the different cities that are popping up, that the riots are happening, and what that means for corporate capture, like how he can connect that with corporate capture.
So basically, and I'd like to just make this statement, and I heard somebody else say this earlier in a different context, but it applies, is that we are all being played. We're all being played in this situation. We were being played with COVID, and now we're being played by this distraction from COVID. And in fact, somebody else pointed out that this is a pretext for the next crackdown on the second wave. I'm not sure about that, but it's an interesting idea. But anyway, so something I noticed, and given what we know about the media allowing us to see what we're seeing, I noticed that certain cities are being affected by these so-called riots, where there's burnings and things going on. So you have Atlanta, you have Minneapolis, you have these sort of second-tier cities, major cities. What are some of the other ones?
I want to say, I thought I saw Houston.
Houston.
I was looking it up on Twitter right now. So Atlanta, Minneapolis, of course. Right. I think Houston.
But you're not seeing these things taking place in San Francisco. You're not seeing them take place in New York. You're not even seeing it in Oakland, which is part of the San Francisco Bay Area. You're not seeing it here in Pittsburgh. You're not seeing it in other places. Okay, and
Portland. It's happening.
Portland. Okay, Portland has been a hot spot for a long time for these sort of now what I'd like to call fake right-left divide type fights, going on with the alleged Antifa activists and the new right activists. I mean, they've been rumbling. It's like they're mods and rockers or something. From the '60s.
I know, and it's these old tropes that are so outdated.
Yeah, and it's just
it's dumb.
And so this has been going on for a while. So I mean, that was maybe a pretext for what's going on now. And it's easy to see these things in retrospect, right? But so these cities are taking place. These riots are taking place in these cities, and I pointed out to Julie. I said, these places, I have a feeling they're being targeted and used as a means of displaying or demonstrating to us that the old infrastructure, the old system, the legacy systems are being are going away. Basically, they're being rid of through fire, which you pointed out the other night is a form of purification, and right. Part of your video Corona cult, yeah, which runs through the steps of
how to indoctrinate into a cult,
right.
So the initiate fire has to be a part of the initiation process, because it's a purification, and so the initiate there must be something that they have to burn, like something from their past needs to be burned in order to initiate them into the new.
Right. And I've
know.
Julie and I have been saying this, and I think I might include this language into our next video. But is we are in an indoctrination period. Okay, we're being indoctrinated into this new system, global governance, and so certain cities are being used as the examples of doing this, of getting rid of those legacy systems. Whereas other cities are not. As I pointed out, San Francisco, New York, and LA. LA tends to be a place where these kinds of things have happened in the past, right?
Did we mention Atlanta?
Yeah, we did. But as I pointed out, here in Pittsburgh, we're not getting that. And there's a reason, and I believe there's a reason for that, and that's because the cities that are not getting attacked in this way are because they have assets and infrastructure that are going to be part of the new model. So here in Pittsburgh, we have Carnegie Mellon University, we have Pittsburgh University, University of Pittsburgh, which has the UPMC, it's the medical center, which is a huge player in the medical insurance industry, which is going to be a big thing in this new corporate culture, corporate structure capture that we're going to be seeing in the future. Carnegie Mellon is a big center for transhumanist research and development, robotics and the like. And then we also have some other. Well, it's mostly the medical and the transhumanist elements that are going on here. There's probably some other things going on. This is a city that is made up of old technologies from the first industrial revolution, but now it's a center of the fourth industrial revolution as well. They missed out on the second and third.
Yeah, so they're also, it's like Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University is also a big contributor to geoengineering.
Yeah.
And geoengineering is not like a conspiracy theory. I did a video about it too called Boiling Frogs. I did it a few months after we moved to Pittsburgh. It's where you've got John Brennan, who is addressing the Council on Foreign Relations, where he's talking about, geoengineering is a great thing. I'd like to see $10 million put into it. It's a real thing. It's right. Harvard is part of it. Like the New York Times has done articles about it. So right. So what you're mostly witnessing as far as your weather patterns is not natural. Right. Like and the Gates Foundation has put millions, if not billions, of dollars into it. Like this is not something. So people laugh at you and snicker. They're the stupid ones. You all know that Harvard, the New York Times has covered it. Like, and it's done in this really like wonderful language of helping global warming by covering up the sun. And as I said in my Boiling Frogs video on our YouTube page, like about a year ago, is that the sun is what brings life. The sun is what helps the plants grow and the food to grow, and it brings life to the planet. If you try to block out the sun, you're going to kill the population. You're going to kill the planet. That's just right. The way it goes. I mean, So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there's one more thing I just wanted to put in when you talk about Pittsburgh and you talk about other cities. So for instance, we see Minneapolis burning down. Okay, so chances are this is an area that is going to be redeveloped anyway.
Right.
This is an area that is being hollowed out through these protests, some of them legit, some of them not, hollowed out through these protests because they're paving the way for the regionalization bureaucracy. So maybe they'll be putting in the future, maybe not like tomorrow, but maybe like years from now, they're going to be building up infrastructure that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the community. Cities like Pittsburgh are already hollowed out because of austerity measures passed through NAFTA and passed through the taking away of the blue collar and jobs and the workforce and the working class.
And Detroit too.
And Detroit as well. So
Yeah.
these are cities that have already been hollowed out. These are cities that have already been captured through through Clinton initiatives during the Clinton administration. Okay, so you're not going to see a lot of protests where you see things burning down and stuff like that, because over the last decade or a couple of decades, all of the money for Pittsburgh has been put into the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center or Carnegie Mellon University. All of the money has been put into that.
It really has, yeah.
You can literally see, like, you'll walk around these gleaming neighborhoods where you've got Carnegie Mellon or Pitt, University of Pittsburgh, gleaming, fabulous neighborhoods with beautiful, like, modern infrastructure for their labs and their classes and whatever. And then literally, like, a block away, it's like a bombed out war zone.
Complete blight. Yeah.
Complete and total blight. Houses falling apart, streets rubbled out, people just hobbling together trying to make a living. Most people in Pittsburgh are living on the what UK citizens call, and it's kind of a pejorative, called living on the dole, or in the United States it's called welfare, I guess. But most of the people in these hollowed out communities that have been hollowed out on purpose by the taking away of their blue collar jobs and their localized economy, most of those people are having, in order to survive, they have to get food stamps. They have to get, some kind of coverage in some way. So these are things that have already been done in cities like Pittsburgh. And so what JP was trying to say is that all the money goes into these, programs that are, robotics or biotics or transhumanism or science-based programs that the majority of the population doesn't have access to working in those programs, getting the education in order to get the job to work in those programs. So that's what we're saying, is that some of the cities are being hollowed out right now as regionalization through multi-state coalitions takes place, and some have already been hollowed out.
So the ones that are not being affected, like Pittsburgh, so there's a reason for that, right? So the infrastructure that's here is part of the future. The other thing, like with, say, the Bay Area, is all about biotech, about real estate for sure. It's a billionaire's paradise, and then there's the Silicon Valley tech sector. There's communications, there's banking, social media. It all comes out of the Bay Area, as well as technology has been coming out of the Bay Area since World War II and after.
Surveillance.
You have all the computing has really been focused in the Bay Area because of the Stanford University and UC Berkeley. And then LA is a center of communications and media and entertainment. They need that for propaganda purposes. New York is the same thing, as well as it's being a center of commerce.
Brooklyn.
Is LA Brooklyn? Okay, so Brooklyn though is like, it's New York City, but it's not Manhattan.
Right. Right. So there's, more news coming out that that the New York Police Department van has been set on fire in Brooklyn. So just a van, just an NYPD van in Brooklyn. So these are signaling.
Right. And these are, these are ideas that are coming to us on the fly as things are taking place. But they, I think that, there will be exceptions to the rule of like what we're saying here. But at the same time, I think the general idea that we're trying to portray here is that these are signals and these are means to which they can do two things: tell you what's going on, but also get rid of these legacy systems. And the places that are being spared contain the systems and platforms that will be part of the future.
Exactly. So that's actually probably the key. If you can't take anything, if all of what we're saying is very confusing and just, it's
the key thing to take away.
The key thing to take away is that cities that are already putting the models in place that represent regionalization and corporate capture and
Well,
globalization
and the means of making money in the future, because Philadelphia is also a big center, and that's not being attacked.
right.
And that's for blockchain
Right. All of
and
that stuff is
education.
coming out of
All the blockchain, yeah,
Philadelphia.
all blockchain
Right.
education.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the KIP system, education system, came out of Philadelphia, and KIP is
Pretty
allegedly
awful.
it's pretty awful, and from what we've heard from one of our friends, our associate researchers, she was talking about how the KIP model of education may be applied to our lives, to where it's like the KIP system is basically you have to earn your way in the school. So you sit on the floor until you earn a desk.
Exactly. So she was saying that there was some representatives from some agency that walked through a KIP school, and it's KIPP. So please research it on your own as well. Something about somebody was walking through a KIP school, and they said, "Well, why are these kids sitting on the floor doing their work, doing their schoolwork, and why are some kids sitting at desks?" And the instructor said, "Well, those kids haven't earned their desk yet."
Right.
And that should just, if that doesn't fucking wake you up about
Right.
the disgusting, aberrant ways that these new systems are being put into place right now, like I don't.
And this is a charter school that was lifted up by Obama.
Right. Exactly.
And Pennsylvania, that's the other thing about Pennsylvania and these two cities, Pittsburgh and Philly, are that Pennsylvania is a testing ground for a lot of dystopian shit.
It really is.
And we've all been forced here onto a smart meter grid. You don't have a choice on whether you get a smart meter or an analog meter. You have to have that. We were all put onto. There are no small players in the internet connection ISP game or world out there. In San Francisco, you had like many choices. You didn't just have to go with AT&T. You could go with a small company, or you could go with a big company. You had lots of choices. Here, you have three. You've got Comcast, Verizon, and AT&T, and there's a reason for that, because we're all being put on this grid, and it's they pushed for net neutrality to go away, and we're already starting to see that starting to take place, where they're like, oh, congratulations, you get a month or two free of high speed internet. But if you choose not to go with this system, then next month, then it's going to go down. If you want it, you'll have to pay more. So that's again. So Pennsylvania is like this sort of testing ground for a lot of these initiatives that are going on. The KIP system is a charter school, and charter schools are everywhere in Pittsburgh. There's very few Pittsburgh school district schools. In the system, they're mostly charter schools. It's very strange. I hadn't seen anything quite like it.
Right. And so, and we all know that charter schools are, but in the old model, I worked at a private culinary school in San Francisco. I worked at Le Cordon Bleu for many years, and we could not accept people into our program who came out of the charter school system. It just didn't fit with the federal regulations or the federal criteria to transition into college or whatever.
But so those things are going away now.
But those federal regulations are now going away. Charter schools are going to be the new normal for for all of us, except if you're wealthy. So the wealthy will still go through these really exceptional programs. And so this is what's called, austerity measures through corporate capture to create a caste system in society where you've got, the rulers and the aristocrats, governing and controlling the rest of the poor population. And so we're funneling, 90% of the population into that sort of serf,
Mm-hmm.
SERF role, where
Right.
you're a poor peasant working the fields, going to your charter school, growing up in poverty, having to live, on the crumbs of the aristocrats in order to survive. This is not a democracy,
No.
So
And they want to go back to that system.
right. So a lot of what you see with the burning of the police cars and the burning down of cities and things like that are messages to you that these old systems are going away. So your local police system is going away. That's what this is about.
And it's easy to cheer that.
It's easy to cheer that too,
It's
because
and a lot of people
hey.
are a lot of people are cheering the fact that capitalism is going away, and you've been seeing all these messages about when we were locked down, oh, nature started taking control again of these cities and blah
Yeah,
blah
yeah,
blah
yeah,
blah.
yeah, yeah.
It's all feel good shit to distract you from the fact that
That you've lost all of
right
your rights.
and that
yeah.
and that they're like, oh well, the way we used to do things was bad, and now this is our new opportunity to change things. Well, that's great, and I applaud that, except that the new way of doing things is going to be even more austere and more severe and completely horrible compared to where we were. It's going to be capitalism on steroids, and it's going to be a way of extracting from you. You are going to be a serf. Just mention real quick, we've been watching this series on Hulu called The Great, and it's about Catherine the Great in Russia, and it's
funny. It's
fun,
dark comedy.
yeah. But and it's loosely based on her life. But something in episode 8 where they were dealing with smallpox, and they touched on vaccinations, because vaccination was just talked about then. It was a new idea back then. So you got the vaccination issue brought up in front of you on this historical drama, docu comedy or whatever. But you also had the class divide, where you had the aristocracy and you had the serfs, and they literally said they were going to get rid of the smallpox epidemic by getting rid of the serfs, where it was breaking out, where the epidemic was breaking out. They were going to burn the serfs
right.
alive.
So they just take them and burn them alive, and then that's how they get rid of. So serfs are people like the cooks, the maids, the cleaners,
right? And for
the peasants.
the peasants, the people,
the
and I was surprised that they called the people who worked in the palace serfs as well. But they were all, it was one or the other. It was very binary. There was no middle class.
And that's exactly what's happening right now. These are the models that are being put in place. We are the peasant class. There is no debating this. This is what they want to do. I am not trying to make people mad. I'm not trying to be a nihilist, or some people pronounce it nihilist, where I'm all doom and gloom and a negative Nelly or whatever. I'm just telling you that this is what is happening when we do these podcasts, when we do our videos. We are simply describing and and illustrating back to you what is happening. The burning of the cities is a message to you that says your old life is over. There is going to be an aristocracy. The aristocracy are going to utilize the peasant class in order to maintain their wealth. And in between that is what I call I don't call it the managerial class. Other people call it the managerial class, and it's a term that I've picked up and come to adopt. The managerial class, or if you're looking at Nazi Germany, the collaborationists, the people who create the models to make the peasantry, to make peasants become the things that the aristocracy can do experiments on through vaccines or poverty or stress or changing the weather or surveillance and technology, through various different ridership programs in your local community. So you've got the collaborationists that are putting the models into place for the peasant class. This is just what's happening. This is not me going, sky is falling, whatever. I'm just telling you what's happening. So
okay, can I slip in here again?
Sure,
okay, because I'd like to continue with talking about this show, and I'd like to wrap up with this. Again, coming back to the idea of the fire. So it didn't hit me until just like last night. That they were burning peasants, right? So same thing going on with the fire here, right? We've got fires going on that are basically getting rid of the old or getting rid of the diseased systems.
Mm-hmm.
And there they're getting rid of the diseased people, okay, through fire, and fire is purification, right, as we talked about before. But the other thing that I'd like to say, and I would encourage you to watch this series if you have Hulu, if you were willing to pony up for it.
It's
Is
like $5 a month.
yeah, whatever. It's
not
not too bad, yeah. But is that it's media or entertainment signaling to us about things that are going on in our lives in a very a symbolic way. Okay, they're analogies or allegories.
Mm-hmm.
And the other Julie mentioned the managerial class. They are also represented in this program as the bureaucrats. So you have a character who is he has some title. He's in the court, but he's not royalty. He is he's a bureaucrat, and he calls himself that, and other people do too. So he's the in between. He's the one that he's the person that helps keep things going, to institute the rules and regulations, and codify the decrees that are coming down from the king. Okay, so you had those people in that system as well, the feudalist system as well, and we are going back to feudalism, ladies and gentlemen. We are, and so these fires and these riots are an indication that that's beginning to take place.